Hey guys, welcome back to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Saturday evening. We are joined again by a friend of the show, credential media member, and from Half Court, Sean Murphy. Sean, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. We were just talking wrestling right before this, and honestly, it's apropos because it felt like Vince McMahon scripted this trade deadline with just some of the moves that we saw, the twists that we're seeing. This is why you love getting in front of a microphone and talking basketball, you know?
Yeah, I we'll get into like the Pistons additions, but like I want to get like your just 30,000 foot view. Luka Doncic, Anthony Davis trade. Like, where were you in? Did you think you got NBA settled?
Dude, so first of all, I was at the game the night before when the Pistons were playing the Mavericks and went and quickly saw my buddy Mike Curtis, who used to cover the Pistons for the Detroit News. Shout out Mike. I saw him before he probably never got sleep again. I was at my desk playing Marvel Rivals with some buddies, and then all of a sudden, my buddy Troy, who does From Half Court with me, he sent me a text with the Shams notification. And normally I'm the person that sends him stuff. And so I was like, this can't be real. Just like everybody else. It's like, this has to be a hack. And then when I saw Bobby Marks was like, no, not a hack. This is legit. I just couldn't believe myself. And I didn't go to bed till like 3:30 in the morning that night.
Shout out to Mike. Funny enough, during the trading deadline, I was doing jersey swaps of Josh Richardson, and I saw that he wore 0. And Mike saw it, and he was like, "Man, you're wild for that," because Jalen Duren wears 0. I couldn't even reply. I just kind of sent him like the laughing emoji. I was like, "Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do, right?" But the Luka trade. I'm at first. I'm like, is this Sharms Karania, not Shams Karania? And I was like, there's no way. There's no way Luka is going to the Lakers, and you're getting Anthony Davis, who, bro, the guy already got hurt.
Not even 4 quarters in. It's just, which, by the way, I don't think Anthony Davis' his first game with the Mavericks was a complete microcosm of what the actual Anthony Davis experience is, because the first couple quarters you're like, oh my gosh, this guy looks incredible. Why were people mad that they traded for this guy? Like, this team looks great. And it's like, there it is. Which the true irony is, as much as people talked about, oh, well, the Mavericks, they were concerned about, Luka's conditioning and with his ability to stay healthy as his career goes on. So we're going to lean on Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis, the two superstars who have missed the most games over the last decade. It's like, that adds up.
Yeah, it the whole, like, I feel bad for Mavericks fans because you traded the 25-year-old that, when healthy, you could argue top 3 best player in the world. That's just like how good he is. But in the same breath, like, the more I listened, because I've been really like locking in on just Bill Simmons' podcast. I absolutely love
Me
it.
too.
He's one of my favorites. He had to literally do like 3 podcasts just talking about it because he still couldn't believe it. He was like, dude, like, there's no way that's the best offer you could get. And then come to find out, like, this wasn't just like a last minute thing. It was like a month conversation. Like, Rob Pelinka's like, are you fucking with me right now? Like, and he's like, oh no, it's like,
did you see the photo from that January 7th meeting hit the Twitter timeline today?
Yeah.
And there's pretty much a still of Rob Pelinka with his mouth open, pretty much like, wait, are you offering me Luka Doncic? Like, is that seriously happening? Which, could you imagine going to get coffee one morning and then you all of a sudden see your general manager meeting with Rob Pelinka just casually talking about trading your favorite player? Like, I don't think I could ever drink coffee again.
I'd be like trading Kate Cunningham for Damian Lillard right now. Pistons
legitimately. Legitimately. I mean, it's like if after the 2007 NBA Finals, the season after, it's like the Cavs were like, you know what? We'll just trade LeBron. We just don't see it. Like that is legitimately the only appropriate comparison. And to me, like I think it was you who made this comparison that week of it felt to me like the last time I saw a trade that shocking, but also just that quickly abandoning the identity of what your team was when the Pistons traded Chauncey Billups for Allen Iverson, because that was the going to work team getting the we're talking about practice guy, which couldn't be the bigger antithesis of what your identity was, right? And like that's exactly what Dallas did. Like this is the first game in 27 years that the Mavericks didn't have Dirk Nowitzki or Luka Doncic on their court. And he was essentially supposed to be Dirk 2.0, the heir apparent. I mean, like Dirk was great, but Luka was literally their greatest offensive player in Mavs history. That tells you how good Luka was. And now Rob Pelinka essentially gets him handed into his lap and essentially gets a job for life because of it, when I could legitimately make the argument he's one of the worst executives in basketball. But because of the Lakers, he's got that golden parachute, baby.
I don't get how they keep getting away with this, man. Like, if you look at some of the, like, they're just franchise players over the years, have never drafted any of these guys. Like, no. Outside of, like, you kind of did a trade for Kobe, but, like, that doesn't really count. Like, you didn't draft Shaq. You didn't draft Kareem. And now you're arguably, when LeBron's gone, you have your franchise guy locked up for the next 5-10 years, possibly. Like,
he did develop Austin Reeves, which, like, he's been really good, but, like, that's not your franchise player, right? Like, you get, like, you just get Luka Doncic, just casually gets to come in. Kareem just casually gets to be traded to your franchise. LeBron just decides to end his career there. I mean, it is, like, people can deny it all that they want, but, like, Lakers exceptionalism and like Lakers supremacy is a very real thing, because that is the biggest brand in basketball. It's the greatest city in the country, you know, like it's like you can say all the things that you want. It's just the sad thing is it's true. Players want to play there.
Yeah, it is. And I know some people are having conspiracy theories with the Boston Celtics and having their young core. And also, you know, they want a Luka-led, Jason Tatum-led NBA Finals to have that Laker-Celtics rivalry rekindled, because I don't think the league likes having just a random champion every year. They want a little bit more consistency. Like when you had Steph Curry and LeBron in the NBA Finals, even the casual basketball fan was getting into it. Like you could go to like a Buffalo Wild Wings and people would be like wearing their Curry jerseys or wearing like LeBron jerseys, and they were into it. Like I think the league, like if you want to be a conspiracy theory and galaxy brain type of person, like it almost feels like Rob Pelinka has dirt on Adam Silver at this point. It's like there's no fucking way. There's no way that like I'm trading my franchise guy. I don't care if this guy's 370 pounds and you know, drinks Coors Light coming up the court. I'm not trading up to the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said. Like I don't think the league would lie and say, "Oh, we're upset about," like, of course they're thrilled that Luka Doncic is going to be on the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Like, of course. But I think at the same time, you know, like another thing people brought up is like, if David Stern was here, he would have vetoed this trade. He would have denied it like he did with the Chris Paul trade. I think people forget how weird of a trade that was, especially from the circumstance that the NBA essentially owned the New Orleans Hornets at the time. And so the reason why David Stern vetoed the trade was because he was essentially the de facto owner and was like, no, this is a stupid idea for the Hornets. Why would they do it? Whereas now, Adam Silver is just sitting there going, well, yeah, this is probably incredibly dumb, but like, my hands are tied here. It's legal to be that stupid. You are allowed to. It is within your rights.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that trade, and we'll probably get into some later. I was looking, there was over 60 plus trades at this deadline. And I think a big reason for that is the new CBA. a lot of teams not wanting to get into the luxury tax and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk about Jaden Ivey actually before we kind of get into the trade stuff, because there was an update with him this week, and I try to like keep fans involved that do subscribe to this podcast or just overall. So this was actually a screenshot from his that I took. He's doing some kind of I don't want to call it walking because it's really not walking, but it's like a water exercise. And then the Pistons PR had an update with him that he got checked out, and they're gonna be checking on him in the next 4 weeks. He's in a walking boot, light activity. I know I saw a friend of both of ours, Eric Vincent. He took a video of Jaden Ivey working with Detroit Pistons trainers, which good to see. I just kind of wanted to get like your overall thoughts with the Jaden Ivey injury overall, and just like what do you expect like with his rehab like going forward? Because I think some fans are expecting him to come back this season. Me personally, I really don't think so. I think it'd be better just to have him just heal and rehab.
Yeah, I in my opinion, you look at the extenuating circumstances of of Jaden Ivey's situation. He's extension eligible this summer. It's good to see him around the team and like actively working away at his rehab. It's good to see that he can do some light weight bearing on that leg, in a walking boot. Like if there's anyone that's going to work as hard as humanly possible for Jaden Ivey to get back, it's Jaden Ivey. And, as great as it would be to see him back in a playoff situation, I think another thing that people forget or underestimate is if he truly couldn't be back until the playoffs, that is a very, high stress environment just to throw him right back in, especially when you essentially have to work him back into the lineup all over again. So, for me, especially with, the moves that the Pistons made at the deadline, I think they put themselves in a position where they don't necessarily have to rush him back, and can allow him to, really make sure that he gets fully healthy, especially when you are talking about, his legs, which is a very crucial aspect of his game, especially with his speed and athleticism and everything that he needs that for, obviously. So it's great to hear the update, glad to hear that he's doing well, and it seems like things are back on track. But just as far as setting expectations for fans, I think the odds of him coming back this season aren't necessarily really high. But again, if there's anyone that's going to work around the clock to make sure that it can happen, it is someone like Ivy. But with the addition of, we'll talk about Dennis Schröder in a minute, I'm sure, but he's someone that very much, aids this team and helps him win now, and really alleviates a lot of that pressure that has been on Cade. So.
Yeah, it's good to see him, get back, rehab. But what I would kind of maybe caution fans is like timetable for him would probably be mid to late April, early May. So that would mean not only would you have to make the playoffs, but you're talking about upsetting somebody, a top seed in the playoffs. And also,
Right.
when he does come back,
middle of the first round.
Yeah. And if he does come back, he's not getting 30 minutes a game. That medical staff would not do that to him. They would probably have him on minute restrictions like we saw with Star Thompson. Obviously, different type of medical injury with the Sar versus Jaden Ivey, but minute restriction, just being careful with him,
Yeah.
But it's good to see him, out there. Him and Cade were doing shimmies last night because Malik Beasley completely was just going nuclear, set a new career high, 36 points. Shout out to Malik. We'll probably talk about him a little bit later in the podcast as well, but did want to kind of update fans on it. It's just, it's good to see him, get back, be on the bench, be with the team. I actually did something funny, and I didn't even mean to do it. I took a picture of him, Sean, and I said, good to see Jaden Ivey on the bench. And the first comment I got was from an account that follows me, but they just, they just like talking shit in the comments. So like, did Monty Williams tweet this? And I was like, oh man. Oh my God. I did not even think about Monty Williams when I was tweeting this, but
I'd
it
love
made
to
me
know how
laugh.
many Pistons games he's tuned into this season.
Like, really?
Yeah. Yeah. No, but I mean, it's with Ivy, like one of the things, like, obviously when the injury happened, he said it was like one of the hardest things that's ever, like that's ever happened to him, so just whenever someone has to go through those type of things, obviously a lot of times we focus on the physical toll that injuries take, but it's equally a mental battle too. So, for Ivy to be able to be around the team you know, be, to be actively involved in that way is definitely good for him and for the group alike.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that injury was really gruesome, and Cole Anthony's still doing that type of dangerous play, which I don't know if you caught that Blazers game. He did it not once but twice, and I was just
Yeah.
like, bro, like, how is that not a suspension or a fine at the least? Like,
At a
what? Like,
certain
what?
point, it's just not a loose ball. Like if you are having to dive for it when you are pretty much right behind someone who is in front of the ball, like if you don't have that positioning, at a certain point, it's not worth the risk. And I get he's not trying to hurt people. That's not his intention, but like at a certain point, I do think the league has to, step in and do something about it in the offseason because I mean we saw what happened to Jaden. This is something that I mean, we're talking about people's livelihoods here. Like we're talking about, like contract dollars that could be affected by this.
Yeah, it's such a reckless play. Like, I'm not going to get into Magic stuff because their fans are just really sensitive about anything. Like, had Magic fans like when I had Zara and he said that Cade Cunningham was better than Paulo Banchero, and they damn near just like had everyone on Magic Twitter just like spam the comments because he
Yep.
got upset over it. But hey, man, people have their opinions and their hot takes, but. Oh, we're going to get into probably the rest of this podcast is going to be trade deadline and Piston centric.
Yep.
So the Pistons got involved in the Jimmy Butler trade,
Yep.
and initially they
As
got
we said they would, by the way.
yeah, we did say that. A lot of things that we said about the trading deadline did come true. They
Yep.
got Josh Richardson from the Miami Heat, really good shooting guard. Obviously, he's been injured this year. He's with Utah, and they got Lindy Waters the third from the Golden State Warriors as part of getting involved in that trade. So I want to get kind of like just your overall thoughts with that trade. I know Trajan has said like they were going to be facilitators if deals made sense. Like, what do you make of getting a shooter like a Lindy Waters?
Yeah, Trajan said that Lindy Waters is someone that, has been on his radar for a good while. He's someone that, has been within, like has been in like pretty elite programs as far as the teams that he's played with, obviously with Oklahoma City and Golden State. So, I think as far as, someone to go out and get who is, who has some youth, but at the same time, I mean, he's 27 years old. He has some experience. You're able to bring him on the end of the bench and as much as it's unfortunate to see someone like, a Wendell Moore have to be released in order to make the roster spot, I think ultimately they got someone who can give a little bit more reliable 3-point shooting, someone who could be, like a defensive energy guy and just give you a little bit more overall depth. The fact that, the Pistons were able to do all of these things without really giving up anybody is, I think, the thing that really just speaks to, like the most impressive part of this deadline to me, which is that, we talked about how they're going to be looking to acquire salaries, but I think they're going to be more selective. Like, I think if the Pistons were, kind of more like what we thought they would be, I think they would have been all over like a Yusuf Nurkic deal to go get a first round pick alongside with that. But since they are firm in that playoff position, I don't think they want to mess with the chemistry of this team. And I don't think they want to bring in, just dead weight if they don't have to. So I think that's the big thing that I really liked from this deadline is they still got assets, but they also got players that can legitimately plug in and play now, fit your scheme, and don't mess up what you have going on.
Yeah, I know Trajan had mentioned that in his press conference. I believe it was yesterday, and he kind of touched on Lindy that when he was in OKC, he was asking their coaching and just like their scouts, like kind of just like about him, and they wouldn't say anything.
Yep.
while he was at OKC. And he's like, when I was with New Orleans, like I saw what he could do. He could shoot, he could pass, defend. Um, and funny enough, the first YouTube video that popped up on my timeline when I typed in his name is when he went nuclear on the Pistons in the preseason.
Yep.
Funny enough,
Yep.
he was just lighting us up from three, playing the passing lanes. I think he's kind of like an under the radar guy that could pop off here. And I think like when you look at him as well, like he's not on like a big contract either. So
no,
it's kind of like a prove it thing. Like if he wants to stay in Detroit, like he's going to have a good opportunity to play for a playoff team that is currently in the 6th seed to get some minutes. I don't really know where he goes into the rotation. I made like a whole updated rotation depth chart. I had him like a 3rd string small forward because I have no idea like where you would actually put him. But I watched some tape on him today. I think there's a lot to like there with him.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be a stay ready guy, to start his tenure with the Pistons. I think he probably slots in pretty similar to where Wendell Moore, slotted in the rotation, someone that, is available to play and, will give energy minutes when needed. But I would say for the most part, I don't necessarily expect him, especially right away. I don't necessarily expect him to be playing heavy minutes, right off the bat.
Yeah, me either. It's just good to have guys like that, and you really didn't have to give up a lot to get them. You had the roster spot, you had the cap space, you were helping facilitate a bigger trade. Now, I did not expect Jimmy Butler to go to Golden State. I thought KD was going to Golden State, funny enough, because there was like so many rumblings of like, oh, is KD going to go back to Golden State? And then KD's like, hell no, I don't want to see Draymond again. Like,
yeah, that was a very, very fascinating situation to watch evolve, especially because like a week ago, Jimmy Butler said something to the effect of he didn't want to extend if he were to go to Golden State. And then he pretty much realized that was going to be his only option. And then all of a sudden he was like, I'd be glad to extend with Golden State. Go Dubs. Like it's interesting what happens when, when your options suddenly become very limited. And I mean, he got a pretty solid haul as far as his contract goes. I think he's like 2 years, $120 million. So, I mean, Jimmy certainly got paid for sure. But I mean, for the Pistons, you got Lindy Waters, out of that. You also, got the more headline player out of that as well in a Dennis Schröder. So, just all just for merely being there to have the cap space and to help the deal get done. They get players and picks, which who says no to that?
Right. I was glued to ESPN, and Bob Myers, who used to work for the Golden State Warriors in their front office, deadass just like leaked like teams that were involved. He's like, yeah, Memphis tried to get him, and Brian Windhorst is like, well, you just kind of spoiled their plans. And like he was just like naming off teams like Memphis wanted KD, the Timberwolves, who we talked about last time you were on, like how bad their season is going, and they've kind of picked it up a little bit since then. But like a lot of teams were in for Kevin Durant. I mean, like who wouldn't be? But I think a lot of Pistons fans are just praying on their downfall and hope that Booker says, "Get me out of here."
Yep. Yeah, which I get why fans wanted, like a major trade like that to happen at this deadline. I think it's, obviously all the years of the Pistons selling at the deadline, and it's been a long time since they have made a move of that type of consequence. And especially you see De'Aaron Fox get moved, you see Luka Doncic get moved, all these things. People are like, well, we want to go get an all-star. And like, I definitely understand, where that's coming from. But, the Pistons, they couldn't really trade a first-round pick at this deadline because their first-round pick that they traded to the Knicks as part of the Isaiah Stewart trade continued to convey each and every year because of the protections that were on it. It just keeps getting pushed back. So one thing about making the playoffs is they will finally not have a first round pick this year, more than likely, but it will at least give them room to do things with their first round picks going forward. And so, trade you even touched on too. If they were to have to make a big move at this deadline, they would have had to have given up significant chunks of their core. And it just wasn't worth the risk of messing with the cohesion and, with the progress that this group has made, especially when more than likely you're not really doing much more than, a first round visit in the playoffs.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that crowd of the fan base of wanting to make a big splash and a big move. I definitely want to get your thoughts on that. We talked about Lindy Waters. I think the headline of this trading deadline for the Pistons is Dennis Schröder.
Most
Now,
definitely.
he was a player that I was looking at when he was in Brooklyn because I knew Brooklyn wanted to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes.
They
And
are
they've
playing
made,
capture the flag 100%.
yeah, 100%. Waving the white flag for Cooper Flag. I think a lot of teams definitely will start tanking pretty soon.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on a player like a Dennis Schröder, and how do you think he'll help this second unit for the rest of the season?
Dennis Schroeder's a really good basketball player. And the reason why he's really only been moved a lot of times as much as he has is because he's been in situations that aren't really looking to win. And then he's like, wait, he's winning too many games. What's going on? And then he suddenly gets moved. And so, I don't think Golden State was really a great fit for him either, just schematically and just, what they do out there. So for them, again, to not really have to give up anything and to bring in someone who is a lot of experience in big game situations, both in the NBA and in World Cup and Olympic basketball as well. I just think that he is the perfect plug gap guy for an Ivy, where he's able to replicate a good amount of that offense from a scoring standpoint. He runs your offense. He gives you, he's not incompetent on the defensive end. He gives you an able body when it comes to that as well. And you have the flexibility of, if you want to keep him as a backup point guard going forward, like obviously you could re-sign him if you wanted to, but also if it doesn't necessarily work out, he's an expiring contract as well. So I heard rumblings that it was going to be heading towards that direction, kind of like a little bit before, an hour before the deadline ended. I was just curious as to what they would have had to give up. And again, it wasn't really anything other than just the cap space that they had. So, for what this team was looking to do at this deadline and for what they're looking to do at this, at the end of this season, I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, same here. He was like kind of like on my tier list. Like I had like Alonzo Ball, Malcolm Brogdon, Dennis Schröder. Like those are the type of point guards I was looking at, obviously. And the one thing with him that I think a lot of Pistons fans will like is his ability to score at all three levels. His ability not only to lead the second unit, but in certain situations, crunch time situations, he could play next to Cade at shooting guard,
Yep.
and be that secondary ball handler. I know Trajan was asked that by the media yesterday, and he's like, that's more of a JB question, but no doubt in my mind, those two could play next to each other. And I was thinking to myself, like, this is probably the best, backup point guard Kate Cunningham and this young Detroit Pistons core has ever played with. No shot at Corey Joseph, but like there's levels, and I think Dennis Schroeder at the end of the day could be a guy that could easily get you 10, 12 points off the bench, leading the second unit with Malik Beasley. I think his assists are going to go through the roof. Someone had mentioned that Dennis and Malik played together when they were in LA. So, I mean, I feel like Malik is really going to love like reconnecting with Dennis. And I think Dennis is just going to like the opportunity to play for an organization that's not going to say like, hey, man, we're good. Bye.
Right.
Trajan mentioned like, hey, like if everything works out and like he plays well, like we can have conversations about possibly bringing him back this summer.
Yeah, and that's really the thing, is he's just been in so many different situations where he's been asked to do so many different things. And I think coming to Detroit, where it's a scheme that fits his strengths, playing a lot more of like a pick and roll centric offense, and being able to be the initiator in that, I think he's going to really enjoy throwing lobs to Jalen Duren. I think he's going to enjoy a lot of the spacing that there is in Detroit. But I also think he's going to enjoy playing alongside a Cade. Not like, no shot to like a Steph Curry, but Steph is a very particular player where a very particular offense is ran. Whereas Cade is kind of, that Swiss Army knife, helps guys, get better around him, and so I think I think for Schröder, I think he's set up to succeed in this system. So I think it's, again, just once it became apparent that Lonzo Ball was not going to be available, I think that was the best, the best possible redirect they could have made.
Yeah, and like what they got for him, obviously you reroute KJ Martin, which I kind of feel bad for, especially after his dad kind of like went on a podcast and saying like, he's always involved in these trades. He thought he was going to stay in Philly, be a piece, but obviously that's not the case. Who knows what happens in Utah? But I mean, you didn't really have to give up anything to get him. I think you gave up 1 second that you got in that Philly deal anyway. So it's like win-win situation. And I think Cade Cunningham is definitely going to benefit the most with Dennis Schroeder because he'll be able to get rest now. He's not going to have to play 38, 39, 40 minutes because you don't have a secondary ball handler or a backup point guard on this team.
And he's someone that you have to respect if you're, if you're playing defense, especially, he's someone that can shoot it from beyond the arc. He's someone that if you don't respect him, he can still blow by you at times as well. Like, he's 31, but he still has a lot of his athleticism. I mean, honestly, he reminds me, quite a bit. And obviously he replaced Reggie Jackson in Oklahoma City, as that backup point guard role. He reminds me a lot of Reggie Jackson in those aspects. Whereas instead of having to be asked to be the number one guy, offensively, like he was when Reggie was in Detroit, Schroeder fits into a role that's a lot better suited, for him. And again, like, just is not going to be asked to do anything other than just be who he's been his entire career, especially when he's been more successful. So in my opinion, I think we're going to see closer to Brooklyn Schroeder than we did Golden State Schroeder, because I just think that Golden State is a ecosystem that is very high pressure, high expectations, and again, just wasn't necessarily a great fit basketball wise for him. Whereas Detroit, I think it's a perfect fit.
And JB feels like a coach where he's just going to say, hey, play your game and let the rest come to you. Kind of like how he's done with Malik. Like, hey, shoot 15 threes. We don't care. We need the scoring. I feel like JB is going to love to have a guy like that, the luxury of having a backup point guard that he can rely on for a good 10 to 20 minutes a night. And you don't have to exhaust Cade. And, Cade can have a little bit fresher legs. Maybe he can get a good 7-8 minutes rest on the bench while Dennis is out there. So definitely a big win for Trajan, I would say, at this deadline, without giving up anything. You kept the core intact. You kept the locker room good. You're adding to high quality character guys, like he had mentioned at the presser. I was very pleased because he actually said what he was going to do. And we've got a lot of lip service from previous regimes of saying like how they want to be a defensive team. They want to win games. They want to restore the bad boys. Like I think Trajan is doing exactly what he said all the way back in the introductory press conference this July.
Him and his team are very detail oriented, and I think the thing is like, even though he said in the press conference yesterday that the playoffs didn't even enter his mind, the thing is that he had scenarios and plans for whatever situation that this team was in, and for guys like Michael Blackstone and Trajan to not only like manipulate the salary cap and just the assets and the pieces that they have, but also just to keep this roster competitive and keep it afloat despite all the different things that it's going through. You can't say enough to what he and the coaching staff have done as far as coming in with a plan, and made promises that they have very much kept.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to see because I haven't seen a competent front office probably since I was like 12 years old when Joe Dumars first got the job, and he was going out and getting players like a Rip Hamilton, which everyone was pissed because they traded Jerry Stackhouse, who was like averaging 30 a game. Trading Grant Hill for like Ben Wallace and Chucky Atkins. Like when I was a kid, man, like people were like legitimately like steamed. Like we just gave up our franchise player for a guy that's been just tossed around. But like, hey, you never really know. Change of scenery. So It'll be really interesting to see like how this young core develops and how this front office attacks, future free agencies, trade deadlines, and I was pretty pleased with it. I do want to get into a trade that was proposed to the Pistons, and I'm sure you saw it. So Jalen Duren was on the Los Angeles Lakers radar. I read a report from Clutch Points, and I want to say it was Brett Siegel. He said that the Lakers tried to get Robert Williams from Portland, Jalen Duren, and they eventually struck a deal with the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte's going to Charlotte. They got Dalton Connect, Cam Reddish, and a first-round draft pick that's in middle school right now. But what I want to like kind of ask you, Sean, is were you kind of surprised that you saw a report that the Lakers tried to like take advantage and get Jalen Duren away from the Detroit Pistons?
Not at all, especially when I saw that Mark Williams was the player that they got. I mean, my immediate question was, well, was Jalen Duren someone that they were interested in? Because Duren's kind of a better version of what they got in Mark Williams, right? Like his ability to like catch lobs, run the rim, be a rim protector, be available, be in good condition. Something that, Mark Williams has struggled with a little bit more. To me, I'm not surprised either that they ultimately declined it, because I think something that's really important to really not underestimate is obviously we know why they went and made that deal was because they want that big man to pair with Luka for years to come. Well, the Caden Duren connection has really flourished this season. And, from everything I've heard, it's not even just the relationship on the court, it's the relationship in the bond off the court too. Like those are guys who work very well together. And with how good that they've been, as much as big of a haul as that was, and as good as a guy like Dalton Connect is, as nice as it would be to have a first round pick, I just think if that was the offer that the Pistons were presented, I think it was smart on Trajan to not jump on that and to allow this to continue to develop at Duren, because especially over the last month, he's been looking more and more like the player that we all thought that he could have been heading into, this season. And obviously when he was acquired on draft night. So I'm not surprised that Rob Pelinka called and inquired about Duren, because again, like with Mark Williams, a very similar, type of prospect, but Duren, in my opinion, would certainly have been higher on that board. So I'm not surprised that Mark Williams is a backup plan to a potential Jalen Duren acquisition. Because could you imagine Jalen Duren catching lobs from Luka Doncic? That would be absolute murder. And by the way, as much as we don't want to admit it, Jalen Duren would look like $1 million in a Lakers uniform.
He would. I would be sick to my stomach if the Pistons would have traded Duren for that. Like, obviously, the first round pick is the first round pick. We'll see what happens there. But what puzzled me about that trade with Charlotte is, Sean, not even 3 weeks ago, they traded Nick Richards and they said, Mark Williams, this is your team. You're going to be our franchise center.
Yep. And then they said, LOL, JK, we just got a really good offer.
Yeah, like Dalton Connect, I know there was a lot of, Pistons fans during the NBA draft time that wanted him. He's going to be a good player, but going from Los Angeles to Charlotte, good grief, poor kid.
To go from playing with Luka and LeBron to LaMelo and Miles Bridges in a span of 24 hours, my thoughts and prayers to Dalton Connect and his family.
Yeah.
Although I just realized I'll probably be seeing Dalton Connect's debut in a Charlotte Hornets uniform tomorrow.
Yeah, and Cam Reddish will be there too. Yeah,
Cam Reddish will certainly be in attendance.
Cam Reddish and Miles Bridges on the same team. That's a goon squad. I'm just telling you, because Cam Reddish is cut from the same cloth as Miles Bridges. Like I know those two are going to get along, like just probably be best friends in the locker room. But that trade, like I'm still trying to process it from like Charlotte's standpoint. Like I don't understand how that like really like helps you long term, because now you need a center. And you have a guy in LaMelo Ball who loves throwing lobs. Miles Bridges is not that guy anymore. He's completely fell off a cliff in terms of just production. He's not that fun, bouncy wing that can just like catch lobs like Asar is currently right now. But yeah, man, I'm glad the Pistons didn't move off from Duren. I'm glad Trajan kept them intact. It kind of makes me wonder, like, what other moves were presented to the Pistons that haven't got leaked out yet? Because I'm sure there were a lot of calls, because Trajan said we didn't call anyone. We were just picking up the phone for other teams. Like, we didn't initiate any contact. We were waiting for teams to come to us because we knew we had all the cards. Like, we knew we had the cap space. We knew that all these teams wanted to get out of the tax. They wanted to get out of the apron. Like, it kind of just makes me wonder, like, what type of trades that were on the table for the Pistons.
Yeah, the only thing that makes sense to me as far as why the Hornets made this move is because, like you said, a couple weeks ago, they kind of handed the keys to Mark Williams to be the franchise center. But like, if you look at his game logs, throughout his career, the most games he's played in a season is 43, and that was his rookie year. Obviously last year he missed the majority of the season, with the injury issues. So like, if you're the Hornets, you probably, were offered something that, was a pretty good haul for someone that you had legitimate questions on whether or not they could stay healthy and on the court long term. So for me, like, if I'm Charlotte, like, if I'm looking at like why it makes sense for them, it's kind of like it's kind of the opportunity of getting an out and getting a good return on your investment when you don't necessarily know what direction it's going to head. And, for Mark Williams, like, again, this is kind of similar to like the Laker effect of, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him get into the best shape of his career now that he's in Los Angeles and now that he's, like under the Laker brand, because they're like, let's be honest, there's a different level of motivation when you're playing with the Lakers and with Luka and potentially contending than if you're in Charlotte and you don't really even know if you're going to be in play-in contention. So, I do think it's one of those things where it certainly could be a fleece on the Lakers side, but I do think it's important to acknowledge just how much of a risk that is, because like, they went and did it because to appease Luka. Absolutely. But those are pretty much all of their remaining tradable assets after the Luka trade. And you went and did it for a guy who's only played like 85 games in his career. So that will be fascinating to watch develop. But if it works out, him and Luka are going to be one of the best pick and roll combos in the league for sure.
Yeah. Health aside, when he's healthy, lob threat, I think he has a standing reach of like 9'6", which is like absolutely wild. And what's even funnier is like, Charlotte had 2 draft picks and they drafted Mark Williams and Jalen Duren. And obviously we traded to get Jalen Duren with the New York Knicks. But man, like,
shout out Charlotte, by the way.
Someone left a comment, Ben Foe, Brandon Miller, LaMelo, and Connect are legitimately going to shoot 63s per game. Probably.
Yeah. Although isn't Brandon Miller out for the rest of the year? Doesn't he have like a wrist injury?
Yeah.
So Connect will probably shoot 63s a game for the remainder of the season. And they're in the Cooper games as well. So they'd be fine with that.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. It allows them to tank even more and gives them another excuse to go for Cooper Flag.
Yeah, apparently, people are like kind of speculating that the league is going to try to fix it so they get Cooper Flag, which I was like, don't even like toy with my mind. Like, if I have to see a LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, Cooper Flag 4 times a year, I might snap. And especially if, their play-by-play guy, Eric Collins, goated, he's probably going to make my eardrums bleed if I have to hear LaMelo to Cooper.
All I'm going to say is I think if the league was in the business of fixing anything for anyone, I don't know if Charlotte would be on the top of their list or not.
I hope it's not. I was on NBA Reddit today, and they were talking about where Cooper Flag might land, and a lot of people are like, probably Charlotte or Utah. I was just like, they probably want him in a bigger market, you guys.
Well, and let's say they were to fix something for Charlotte. Wouldn't they have done it while Michael Jordan was still their owner?
Yeah, maybe not.
They're like, screw Michael Jordan, actually. We hate money.
Yeah,
we hate all the billions of dollars that guy made us.
Yeah, Ben Foe said the Spurs could also lay the number 1 pick due to Atlanta. Oh, that would be hilarious.
That would if the Spurs ended up getting Cooper Flag, I think Twitter would legitimately crash out of fans just crashing out like no tomorrow.
Yeah, like Brooklyn makes a lot of sense. You want him in
Yep.
New York? Oh, we'll see. I mean, like, no one thought the Hawks were winning the draft lottery last year. That was just like complete wild. You never know.
Yeah. Well, it just shows you how like, just with the way that the new lottery odds are, like how out of whack it can really be. So a lot of teams, for all they know, could be in position to go and get Cooper. To me, it'd be really cool if he ended up in imagine if he ended up in Portland, like with under Chauncey, with that really like young competitive roster, like him, Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson, like that would be a really fun young squad. And by the way, Chauncey deserves a lot of credit for how good Portland's looked this year because they actually look like they actually kind of have an identity now. They're playing good hoops. They only have a couple, like they're pretty similar to where the Pistons are. It's just they're in the West. So because they're in the
Yeah.
West, they're a bottom 3 seed.
Yeah, it's someone 'cause I remember when it was Chauncey bobblehead night, and someone's just like Chauncey got beat so bad. Someone like left a comment, Portland's about to go on a win streak. I can't remember who left that comment, but I gotta go find it because I remember doing a post-game show after we beat Portland saying that, and I was just like, I don't know, man. And like it's happening. Like Chauncey and the Blazers are just playing absolutely great ball. And I
Mm-hmm.
watched a couple of their games, and I think some people need to, start apologizing to Scoot Henderson because he's starting to figure it out. I think a lot of people just sold their stock on him right away after they saw Wemby. Sometimes it takes players a little bit longer to develop and figure it out. And I
Yep.
think Chauncey's the perfect coach for Scoot because Chauncey's been at, the lowest lows and the highest highs. And I think you're starting to see, all the teachings and the development under him. And Scoot's going to be a really good player for a really good time.
He's owed apologies as well too, because people were just assuming that he was going to be on the chopping block after this season. But like Chauncey was given he was dealt such a bad hand in Portland. He goes there to compete with Dame and with CJ. Then all of a sudden they radically decide to tank out of nowhere, and he's just given this terrible roster that loses 60 plus point games throughout the season. And then now all of a sudden you're seeing, like the group never really quit on him. You're starting to see them really piece it together. And now like the Portland Trailblazers are a legitimately difficult team to face on a night in, night out basis. And they play very similar to how their coach played when he was a player. So it's fun to watch. So yeah, again, just happy for Chauncey, man. I always knew he could be a good coach.
Yeah, same here. I know a lot of fans want him as a coach or, in the front office, but I think he's where he's meant to be.
Yep.
But I know I was reading an old article. It's funny you mentioned him talking about how when Ron Holland was drafted, and he's like, yeah, Trajan gets it. Trajan gets
Mhm.
it. Like he's such a Detroit Piston type of player, like the grittiness, the way. I feel like every game, Sean, he's in some sort of dust up. And
Oh,
it's like
absolutely.
it was in one last night where I can't remember which 76ers player it was, but like he like grabbed his arm for like no reason, and then he's like, "You want to start something?" I was like, "Bro, like what are you doing?"
He always is just running his lips with somebody, and it's fun to watch. And I mean, the thing you got to commend with Ron Holland is he's not afraid of anybody, which that's the mentality you need as a rookie to be able to come in and compete with these guys night in, night out. Like if you're just looking up and going, "Oh my gosh, that's LeBron James," like you're not going to be set up to succeed. So the fact that he goes in, he doesn't give a he's just ready to go. And
Yeah,
by the way,
I
his improvement as the season's gone on, like the 3-point shot is really starting to come together. His defensive prowess is looking great. He's always looked really good when driving to the rim, but I've just been really impressed with his progress. Even though he's not in the Rising Stars game, which is stupid to me, I couldn't be higher on what his future looks like, especially with how his development has gone this season. Very rapid.
yeah, I think the one thing with him coming out of the draft was people weren't sure if he was going to be able to shoot threes at an NBA level,
Yep.
which I always thought that conversation was stupid because
Yep.
the form looks good. And like you look at the numbers, Sean, like I think in December he shot like 40% from three. I don't know what he shot in January, but the shot looks good. And it seems like he's hitting more of those corner threes, those elbow jumpers. The one thing with him is I can't wait for him to learn how to control his burst and his speed, because there are times where like he's looking to murder somebody, putting them on a poster, or just going up for a fast transition layup. Like when he learns how to just slow down a little bit and manipulate the defense, man, this kid's going to be a monster.
Yeah, for sure. Since December 1st, Ron Holland is shooting 35% from three. So, solid sample size. It's about 30 games. So, it's been looking a lot better as the season's gone on, for sure.
Yeah. I'm very impressed with it. I wanted to talk to you about Malik Beasley, and it's not about him not being in the 3-point contest. It's kind of like the comments
Insane,
that
by the way.
Yeah, we'll probably get into Cade's All-Star stuff and the 3-point
Yep.
contest after this, but I wanted to get like kind of like your overall thoughts. There was an article he sat down with Hoops Hype's Michael Scotto, and it was an exclusive interview talking about how like he didn't want to be traded from the Detroit Pistons. And then Trajan said in this introductory press conference that he like basically said, "Can you like please not trade me? Like I really like it here." I can't remember the last time we signed a guy on a 1-year deal and he's had the impact that Malik has had, not only on the court, but off the court as well, in the community and in the locker room. So, like, what are your like overall thoughts with Malik Beasley as an addition this season, and kind of his comments about wanting to stay in Detroit and be a Detroit Piston?
I think we're starting to rapidly approach this being one of the greatest free agent signings in Pistons history, just with, like what he's been able to bring as far as, on court production and off the court leadership. I mean, not only did he, come out and flat out say, I want to be here. And, he even said after the game against Philly, which by the way, was a career night for Malik Beasley. He came out and said, I've wanted to be here since day one. I continue to want to be here. And, from the sounds of it, he wants to find a way to still be here, beyond this season and going forward. And so, just especially when you look at the contract in comparison to what you're getting, has to be the best value signing the Pistons have had in free agency history. But, just from someone that understands the culture. I remember before the season, we were on the pod. I think it was actually on your pod. We were talking about when he said he wants to bring the Detroit basketball back, which, it's an easy thing for anybody to say, but it's clear that he knows exactly what that means and exactly, how to embody that. And so, it's very clearly someone that the locker room is just gravitated to, just leans on, someone that they really love and respect both on and off the court. And again, I can't think of a better signing that they could have made as far as what they've gotten in return. And to me, like I have a hard time seeing the Pistons letting him walk in free agency. And if we're to believe what Malik Beasley's saying, which he is a very like says what he thinks type of guy. I don't think he's just saying this to say it. Like I think he truly wants to find a way to be here going forward, which I think the biggest thing that the Pistons have going for them is that they are starting to become a place that players want to be, especially players that are playing as well as Malik has played. So, yeah, I mean, if this is as good of an indictment on, of Trajan's regime as you can get.
Yeah, I wasn't really surprised with like the impact, because I've watched him all the way back from Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
I remember during the draft, because he was in the same draft class as Henry Ellenson. That's a throwback for Pistons fans watching and listening right now.
Some league Dirk Nowitzki, Henry Ellenson. Yep.
Basically, he's actually on the G League team with the Bucks, and he's balling right now. Like I saw that the other day. I was like, oh wow, he's still playing.
When he's in a G League gym, it's GGs.
Yeah. Kind of getting off track a little bit. when the Pistons brought him in for a pre-draft workout, I'm like, you got to get him. He's the perfect prototype, 3-and-D wing. Obviously, Van Gundy and Jeff Bauer, their biggest weakness was whiffing on draft picks. I think we can both agree there. But the signing of him for the value at which you got was a prove-it deal. It was a $6 million prove-it deal. And I'm sorry, he's worth probably 3 times, 4 times the amount of money that he signed for, just for the impact alone. He's won the Pistons several games this season. The chemistry that he has with not only Cade Cunningham, but, guys all the way at the end of the bench, even the two-way guys like Adonis Jenkins and Ron Holland. JB had a really nice quote about him saying, like, everyone sees the shooting, but no one sees the behind-the-scenes stuff, the positivity, the energy that he brings. And I think that matters when you're a rebuilding team like the Detroit Pistons, trying to get back to relevance and trying to get back into the playoffs. I think the contract situation is going to be very interesting because the Pistons don't have his bird rights. He signed a 1-year deal. Right now, as it's projected, they'll have about $24 million in cap space, and that is considering whether or not Cade Cunningham makes All-NBA. Now, if he does make All-NBA, it might be a little bit less, which I've heard some fans talk about it. If Cade Cunningham's All-NBA, I'm not mad at it.
I expect him to be All-NBA if he continues on this trajectory.
Yeah, same here. Like, I think he deserves it. Like, 3rd-team All-NBA bare minimum, just the way he's playing. But to kind of like circle back to Malik, like, I think this is the best free agent signing since Chauncey Billups. And that might sound like a hot take, but like just the production, the way he's come in, the way he's just interacted with fans. Like, I remember when he first got here, he's giving out like $300-$400 sneakers and just placing them around the city of Detroit. Like, he doesn't have to do that. Like, the Twitch streams that he does, like, when they're not playing with like Cade and Stu and just like kind of like bonding when they're not playing. I think that was missed last year. Like, no shot at Alec Burks or Bojan Bogdanovic, but those vets seemed like they got their shots up, they went to practice, and they went home to their families. Malik is just like so involved, like off the court, that it's resonating on the court because they're building chemistry together.
Yeah, this was a group that with everything that they went through these last couple of seasons, they need the joy back in that locker room. They need, the good vibes again, because that's when you are losing as much as you are, when you are living, in the basketball purgatory hell that they were in over the last couple of years, it's hard to keep that enthusiasm to go in and get better each and every day. And, I think the locker room, like cohesion that this group has is a major factor as to why they're as good as they are now. And I mean, not only was he playing as well as he was, that he couldn't be traded. I mean, he's too big of an impact on this locker room. Like, if they moved Malik Beasley, it could have legitimately impacted whatever trajectory this season had, because it would be a big blow to no longer have Malik Beasley with those guys. So again, like you said, there is going to be a market for Malik Beasley this summer. We already know that contenders were calling Trajan about Malik at this deadline. But I mean, again, if they're able to, strike a deal and work something out, which, they do have to figure out those extensions with Ivey and Duren, but that won't really kick in until, the following year anyway. I think if you're the Pistons, it's one of, if not the top priority this offseason, is figuring out how Malik stays in Detroit long term.
Yeah, I hope they figure it out. He's just so crucial to what this team does. I would not surprise me if he's a finalist for 6th man of the year. He's absolutely going to shatter Sadiq Bey's 3-point record. He could possibly do it before All-Star break, which is honestly kind of scary.
Crazy.
It's crazy. It just kind of shows you like how elite he's been. It's just a 3-point sniper, but hopefully Trajan and the Pistons can work a deal out. Maybe he'll take a hometown discount to stay here. He seems like the type of guy that might do that for maybe a year or two, and maybe Trajan and those guys can, pay him when they have a little bit more of a available cap space to spend. Because if you're looking into next season, you have Cade's rookie max going to effect. That's $44 million. You have another year to Tobias at $26 million, and then you have Stu still at $16 million. And then you have, possible, free agents, whether you want to bring them back, like a THJ and others. So this summer, I think, is going to be very interesting for the Detroit Pistons front office of how they can, keep this locker room intact, because I don't think too many Pistons fans thought that they were going to have close to 26, 27 wins before All-Star break.
Yeah. And I mean, this is going to be like, this summer is really going to be when you're going to start seeing Trajan starting to shape the team more in his image. Like I think especially after we get some true high pressure, play-in or playoff minutes where he really gets to evaluate these guys in a bigger stage. I think because of that, I think you're going to see, Trajan really start to be more decisive with who is and who isn't here going into next season. And, like you said, like THJ's coming off the books, Dennis Schröder, someone that you're going to have to figure out, what you want to do with him as well. There's quite a few guys where, even Tobias, you could decide, if you're going to keep going with him going into next season. At the very least, it's going to be fascinating. But for now, I mean, these are good problems to have for the Pistons, because you actually have guys that you want to keep because you're playing well. That's something that hasn't been the case in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had like this kind of type of win pace since like the Blake years. And I did see a question from Derek Brown. He wanted to know what contract for Beasley looks like. I'm probably the worst person, Derek, to answer this question. But I know you said 3 for $40 million. I mean, if that's what you're paying to keep him, I think your head is in the right space. Like if you want to do that, you want to lock him up for 3 years, sure, do it. I mean, you could arguably say maybe your second, third best offensive player on this team right now.
Yeah. So Malik he's 28 years old. He's been in the league for 8 years now. So in all likelihood, I think if the Pistons were to sign him to some contract, I think the years is about right on the money. I think it would be about 2 to 3 years, because the important thing is to get to 10 years of service, because once a player gets to 10 years of service, then your earnings potential goes up. The other thing is, I think Malik, when you are a player around that, around that experience level and that age level, you want to be able to set yourself up to get another potential contract. So, to me, like 3 years, 3 years, 48 million wouldn't surprise me. Like a 4-year deal. Detroit, I could certainly see Detroit trying to offer too, but I think both sides are going to want to have some form of flexibility, because if you're the Pistons, you want to offer yourself some form of potential out if things don't work out. And if you're Malik, you want to be able to set yourself up for another potential payday with a bigger salary, because you'll be at that point of years of service at that point. So, that's kind of the biggest thing to look out for as far as, his market is. I think you're going to want to set you want security, you want longevity, but you also want to set yourself. It's a lot of times it's about what's the next payday as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't, because I just saw a comment from Drew Thomas saying like, what would be too much for Malik Beasley? I would say if you start getting into like the 15, 20 million a year, I think that's where it kind of like you like him as a player, but like if it comes to that point, or there's a team out there it's just going to try to outbid you, you might have to say goodbye. But I think if you can stay in between like a 10 to possibly like a $13 million range, I think that's doable and flexible. That's double of what he's making this season. I know someone said maybe the MLE. If he takes the MLE, that's absolutely like a home run for the Pistons.
And honestly, that's kind of where I envision being him around money wise next year. I think production wise, that's kind of really where he fits. And I don't think the Pistons are going to be looking to go into the first apron or anything like that. So, I think an MLE for Malik Beasley makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Wiz, I did not need to know that. Just a reminder, we're still paying Dwayne Dedman. I
Thank
don't
you
think
for that.
I didn't even know that Dwayne Dedman was still on the books. Shout out to Troy Weaver. Shout out to the Wizards. We got Marcus Smart and Chris Middleton. Maybe they'll be buyout candidates.
I mean, the question is, like, does he follow Marvin Bagley to his next destination? Like, like Troy, like he had to trade his guy again, you know? But after, in all seriousness though, Dwayne Dedman, he does come off the books after this year. So starting in 2025, 2026, the Pistons will not have any more dead salary on the books. So Trajan will be able to find other players to make his dead salary going forward. Who is our next Josh Smith? That is the things you want to find out here at Pistons Talk. Be sure you're subscribed. Who will be the Josh Smith, Dwayne Dedman invitational player going forward?
The stretch and waving never made sense to me. I would get a Woj bomb and be like, why? Oh, that's why.
Yeah. I mean, for when Troy did it, I like, you're just trying to get picks. I understand it from that standpoint, but like really when they did it with Josh, it was because he is such a bad vibe to this culture that it is quite literally better for us if you are not here.
Yeah. Shout out to Washington, man. They had a really good deadline. Got rid of Kuzma to the Bucks, which kind of was a head scratcher. I was like, really, Milwaukee? That's the direction you're going in? And I don't know. My Kuzma stock is completely gone after I looked at his numbers and like see like how drastically he's just fallen off a cliff. But maybe as like a third or fourth option, he can kind of pick it up there with Milwaukee.
They did get someone whose legs can still move. So like that's a positive. Chris Middleton, as as good of a player as he was, he is like, I'm not saying he's washed, but like he's getting out the dryer sheets for a reason, like he's essentially going to be the like the role model veteran for Washington going forward. So unfortunately for him, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a similar role for like Marcus Smart there too. But I think like Washington, like you said, they got picks, they got rid of Kyle Kuzma. And, I think guys that can I think they got guys who can actually kind of help them build a semblance of a culture there in Washington and actually help them kind of, get those habits to not be one of the worst teams in the history of basketball next season. They can still be bad, but not historically bad. And that's what matters.
Yeah, I thought they had a pretty good deadline. I mean, I didn't see Chris Middleton getting traded. I was kind of surprised. The Marcus Smart one was even more surprising. I was like, oh, wow. Like, Memphis, like, really? Like, really
it's weird to see Memphis, especially when they're having as good of a season as they are, make a salary dump trade in the middle of the season. I mean, like Marcus Smart didn't even play 40 total games in a Grizzlies uniform, which is kind of the unfortunate aspect for him. But it's one of those things where they move on and now like really, because really for them it's about signing Jaren Jackson Jr. this summer because of how good he's playing and just praying to God he doesn't go to the Lakers.
Yeah, man. I know it's completely off topic. I saw Ben Simmons go to the Clippers and I was like, oh, Clipper curse is back. Like, what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, seeing the Ben Simmons contract finally come to an end as far as the extension that he was given by Philadelphia there. Now Ben Simmons is probably going to be a minimum player for the rest of his career. I mean, listen, he's another body. I don't hate it, but at the same time, I'm not expecting Ben Simmons to go in and actually have significant playing time where he's contributing in a meaningful way. I've learned at this point that's just not who Ben Simmons is. So yeah, I mean, hey, if you're the Clippers, you got someone who was good at one point, so there's something.
Yeah, I have one more topic, and I felt like before this trading deadline, I've had you on the podcast, throughout the year, and our conversations were always very consistent and with what we thought that this organization was going to do. So next topic we're going to talk about is, what would you tell fans that wanted the big move this deadline and didn't get it, why it didn't happen, and why it may possibly happen maybe this summer, maybe down the road? Why do you think that Trajan and this front office decided to just stand pat right now?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So we alluded to this a little bit earlier, but again, the Pistons did not have a first round pick that they could reliably have traded at this deadline because of the fact that when they went and got Isaiah Stewart in the draft, they traded a first round pick at the time, and it was heavily protected, so it continued to it continued to still belong to the Pistons. It will finally convey this offseason because the Pistons will, no longer be a lottery team because of it. They won't be bad enough to still have their pick. On top of that, if they were to have made a move and to have done it without being able to really trade any first round draft capital, you would have had to have given up at least two of your young players. So the conversation I would have with those fans is, who do you give up? Do you give up Jaden Ivey? Do you give up Asar Thompson? Do you give up Jalen Duren? Especially with how good that they're playing right now, I just don't know, that there's necessarily an incentive to do so. And then the other thing as well is, and I think this is just kind of the biggest thing is, as much as the Pistons want to improve their roster and to go get a star to help this team going forward, for one, I don't really know who you could have really gotten at this deadline because a lot of the big stars or a lot of the big fishes, so to speak, were kind of moving elsewhere. And the big thing is, no matter what move they make, it's not really changing what they're doing this season. So for me, the biggest thing is the rest of this season is really for them to continue to evaluate and see what they have in house. And especially the playoffs are going to be the best evaluation period for who these guys really are. Because when that pressure's, turned up, when the heat is on, that's when you see who players really are. Specifically, you see if they're ready for this. You see how far they need to go to be ready for it. And you see who just naturally rises to the occasion and shines in that moment. So for me, it's always been about evaluating this team, giving it at least a season, seeing what this group is about, and then going into the summer when a lot of other teams realize who they are, but also who they aren't. That's generally when you see more players become available, because that's really the big thing. Like, Luka Doncic aside, because absolutely nobody saw that coming. Like, yes, you saw Jimmy Butler get moved. You saw De'Aaron Fox get moved, but some of those things were, largely kind of telegraphed and we kind of saw, coming for the most part. So for me, it's like, you really have to play your time, like play your cards right. And it's really all about timing. And it was too early for this group, especially with what they didn't really have as far as assets to give up.
Yeah, the player I'm going to bring up, and we talked about him a lot, is Brandon Ingram. He was the one player that Pistons fans were pounding the table for. Funny enough, he actually got traded for two former Pistons to go to Toronto. But I look at Toronto, and I look at like what their core is. I think they'll be improved, but my only question with the fit there is, like, you still have RJ Barrett. You still have Scotty Barnes. You have Brandon Ingram. Like, someone's going to have to sacrifice their offense, and it's not going to be Ingram. I would also say that Pistons fans is you didn't really have. You have a first round pick to trade. I will say that in 2028, I believe. But I think a lot of these teams want first that are not 3 years out. They want
Right.
more first. Like, this year's draft, I think, was very crucial. The Bulls got their draft book back because they know that this draft is going to be really good because they traded Zach LaVine.
Yeah. The only teams you really want long-term out are like Phoenix, who are going to struggle in the long term because of the decisions that they made.
Yeah, it's like I get fans want to be better and they want to make the big splash. They want to make that big move. It's going to come. And I think Trajan needs a little bit more time then a few months to pull the trigger. Like he mentioned at that press conference, if you guys haven't watched it on the Detroit Pistons YouTube channel, saying that like it entered our mind. We had an internal discussion as an organization about possibly, making a move because we're much improved and we're ahead of the timeline of which we thought we were going to be, because Trajan said, I didn't think we're going to be in the playoff spot. But at least they're having conversations. Yep. And I think they just want to evaluate everyone. They want to give JB a full year of, working with the Duren, working with a Cade, an Ivy, a Sar, a Ron. They want to see what he can get out of those guys. And as of late, Jalen Duren is probably playing the best basketball of his young career for the last month or so. The first couple months of the season, I just kind of gave him a pass because it's another new coach, another new system to try to learn under. But like as of late, man, he's been playing really good ball. He's looking like a double-double machine night in and night out. But I would just tell fans, like, I know we preached patience for the past 5 years. You got to give Trajan a little bit more time to see what he actually has before he pulls that trigger for that next big move.
And you only get that type of move so many times in your tenure. You want to make sure it's absolutely, without a doubt, the right player that you're bringing in, because you were a lot nicer about that Toronto trade than I am, because I think that was a horrible move for the Raptors to make. I mean, listen, like, don't get me wrong, you got a guy to put alongside Scotty Barnes. Like you like, yes, your floor is inherently better. This team gets very expensive very quickly to be very mid. Like, you're going to build around Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, and RJ Barrett. This is a team that's already going to be, more than likely well in the first apron because of the contracts that they have. And I'm sorry, but like, I just don't know how much Brandon Ingram really elevates this team to where this is a worthwhile move for them to make, especially when you look at the fact that this is more than likely going to hinder their lottery odds to get a Cooper Flag going into this draft class, which like is really what you should have been focused on if you are the Raptors, because you were actually tanking for the first time. Like, you actually like had a direction, and now you're just going like, yeah, Scotty's going to have this incredible season next year and we're going to be really good really quickly. But I just don't see it with this group. Like, yes, they have some young talent, but I just don't think Brandon Ingram is someone that's going to be this massive franchise lifter. And again, he's someone that's not really consistently available. And I'll just keep hitting this until the cows go home. If Trajan Langdon wanted Brandon Ingram, he probably could have had him by now. If there's anybody that knows Brandon Ingram as a person, his injury issues, all of those things, as we have established on the show before, it is Trajan Langdon. So the fact that there was never even a sniff of interest from the Pistons when it comes to Brandon Ingram should probably tell you everything there is to know.
It's funny because, like, if you look, Sean, they're kind of falling into the territory of like, what's the last big free agent that they signed that, like, off the top of your head?
For the Pistons?
No, the Raptors.
Oh, the Raptors? Really never. Like that. Like Kawhi. Like, I mean, like, Kawhi was their big acquisition via trade, but then he immediately left. So like, really, like, Toronto historically, like, this was their free agent move, which is why they did it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they had to use one of the draft picks that they got in the Siakam trade from, the Indiana trade, sending him to Indiana. And I'm thinking, like, that's kind of like, that's going to be their free agency acquisition. It would be hilarious if Brandon Ingram left.
Well, you're going to have to sign him to at least like you're going to have to sign him to at least $50 million a year. And I just don't know if Brandon Ingram's worth that money at this stage in his career. And especially someone who needs the ball in his hands. Isn't Scotty Barnes, his whole thing, his ability to be a playmaker, to kind of be like a, kind of a point forward that can help, facilitate and set guys up. Like, that's not Brandon Ingram's game. It didn't really work out very well alongside, a Zion. So just to be quite frank with you, I just don't like the move. And again, I didn't think the fit next to Cade would have been the greatest either. I could be wrong, but I mean, again, I just, again, I think there's a reason why the Pistons are staying patient, because you never know how this could develop. And the guy that they really want could become available sooner than you think. If Luka
Yeah.
Doncic can be traded, anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, we could trade back for James Wiseman. You never know. Have a reunion.
I feel so bad for Wise, man. So yeah, so bad.
I can't believe he got traded while being injured. Absolutely wild. The trade deadline has like no favors to any
No.
players, shape or form. I did want to kind of touch on Cade Cunningham and the All-Star stuff. Obviously, he made the All-Star team as a reserve.
Yep.
The team he got selected on, I'm sorry, I don't know what Kenny Smith was doing. If you look at the teams, I don't know if you have it pulled up, but like Kenny Smith's team is going to get waxed, I believe. Shaq's team is pretty star-studded. Charles Barkley, kind of hilarious saying I'm not drafting any Europeans because they're not going to play hard.
Yeah,
but
they all kind of had like different themes. Like Shaq kind of got the veteran group. I feel like I feel like Kenny kind of got like the young, like kind of like the young and scrappy group, and then like Chuck, it almost felt like he almost kind of went for the vibes team in a way. I'll be fascinated to see how this plays off. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Kane on the same team as like Evan Mobley and like like in a lot of those guys? I wouldn't be surprised if his team was like more competitive and like was kind of the group of guys that like wanted to be there. But like, the thing that was surprising to me, and I'm sure surprising to a lot of people, was, the fact that Cade Cunningham's going to be in the 3-point competition. And, I think this is going to be, like a real, like a real coming out party for Cade Cunningham at this All-Star weekend. Like I don't think Cade is the type of guy where he's just going to be happy to be there at All-Star weekend. Like I think he wants to compete, and and I got the roster pulled up now. Like it's certainly, it's certainly going to be really competitive. It looks like Chuck pretty much got like the team full of bigs. So like that, like I feel like they could either dominate or be absolutely awful, and there might be no in between. Like if you look at the team that Cade's on, like yes, I could see them being waxed, but like they got Anthony Edwards, they got Evan Mobley, they got Jalen Williams, Brunson, Garland. Like I think they got some guys who could really like get into the competition of it all. I get why people don't like the format, but what I would say is this is the format that they've been using in the Rising Stars game over the last couple of years. And I've actually loved the Rising Stars format as far as that goes. So, and we might potentially see the Thompson twins go up against Cade. If that team wins in the Rising Stars Challenge, that team's going to be playing on All-Star Sunday. So if that does end up happening, that would be fascinating.
Yeah. Shout out to Asar for actually getting invited, because initially like there were no Pistons in the Rising Stars game, and that was like the first time in like quite some time that I didn't see a Piston on there. But obviously injuries happen, stuff like that happens. But I did want to touch on the All-Star thing. I think Cade just wants to do everything. Like would not surprise me if like we just saw him do like random skill stuff. He just wants to be a part of it. And what I will tell fans that are like watching, All-Star weekend is more than just playing in the games.
It is a very action-packed weekend. In fact, a lot of it is the charity work, the PR stuff. Like it is a very, very busy weekend. So,
yeah, what I would say for fans watching or listening is like, this is an opportunity for Cade to scout the stars. Cade to say like, hey, we got something good going. Like this is a chance for, you see it all the time. Like I'll be paying attention to see who Cade's hanging around, because maybe in a few years they're teaming up on the Detroit Pistons.
Well, a lot of the relationships are formed at All-Star weekend, are formed in Team USA. And it's been said by writers of the team that like Cade Cunningham's the guy that players want to play with. And I wouldn't be surprised if, we see reports that like an all-star big or, like a dynamic wing is like, I want to play with Cade.
Yeah.
There's only going to be so much room to go play with Wemby.
Yeah. I mean, if the Spurs keep like getting players for like the fact that they got De'Aaron Fox without really giving up like a Stephon Castle, which blows my mind. Sacramento Kings are literally the 2021 Bulls right now.
Not even Keldon Johnson.
Like, I know.
They didn't even have to give up any of the picks from the DeJounte Murray trade. And the fact that like the fact that they essentially are just Bulls West and have Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and a team that's very similar to what that Bulls team was last year. I mean, hey, good on the Kings. Keep doing what you want to do, but that's why I trashed the Tyrese Halliburton trade at the time, because your ceiling with Fox wasn't going to be very high, and the chances of ending up with neither of them were very real. And that is the reality we are in for the Sacramento Kings. But no, I think like you said though, like these are weekends that are very formative for what teams could potentially form in the future. And if Cade continues to blossom into the guy that we all think he is, like I legitimately think that like the 4 destinations that like players could want to be at one day, like I think teams would want to play with Victor. I think players will want to play with Luka in LA. I think people will probably want to play with Paolo in Orlando. I think people will want to play with Cade in Detroit.
Yeah, I think those are like all like good lists, because like the way you look at it, it's like would not surprise me, because I look at Cade's drafts, like would not surprise me if you ever saw like a Scotty Barnes and Cade team up. It would, because they both played at Mountain Berg together. Wouldn't surprise me if you saw Evan Mobley and a Cade play together at some point in their career. I think at All-Star Weekend, like obviously it's cool to see our players that we watch and cover and support, show out at All-Star Weekend, but it's a lot of networking there too. Like would not surprise me in a few years you see a possible reunion because they bonded being All-Star reserves together, or they bonded at All-Star Weekend, which I'm so happy Cade got in. I think, everything he's been through over the past couple of years, I think this season has been just such a blessing for all these young guys. But
I just miss the days when players could get traded during All-Star Weekend. Like, remember when DeMarcus Cousins was at his locker after the All-Star game? And they're like, hey, how's the All-Star game? Also, you don't have to leave New Orleans because you're here now. And he's like, wait, what? What's going on?
Yeah, like I remember. Do you remember Reggie Jackson at All-Star Weekend wearing the Detroit Bad Boys hat? And everyone on Twitter's like, we're getting Reggie Jackson.
Oh my gosh, man. That absolutely crazy. Whereas now you just have guys getting traded mid-game like normal human beings do, right? Right?
Yeah. Like I still remember like Dallas has such a bad track record. I remember they traded Harrison Barnes when he was on the bench.
Yeah. Well, like it was like literally like earlier in the week, Steve Kerr, they had to close the locker room before the game because they had to break the news to Andrew Wiggins he was about to go to Miami.
Did you see that video of a guy at a Heat game tell like Kevin Love and all those guys that Jimmy got traded? And Kevin's like, who'd we get? Like Andrew Wiggins. He's like, all right, who else? And then he's like naming them. He's just like, hell yeah.
Dude, the best part is the Heat social media team, somehow they found that guy and they got him to break down the trade on their Twitter timeline. Like instead of making the graphic, like obviously they made the graphic of like, welcome to these guys. They had him make a video of like, I told the Heat players, so now I'm telling you, these are your new Miami Heat players. Like, I love that they leaned into it. Just incredible.
Oh God, but I forgot about that. Our biggest all-star moment of the last 15 years is Brandon Knight getting fucked by Kyrie.
Yeah, the fact that Cade winning the MVP during the Rising Stars Challenge is the best trophy the Pistons have had since the Larry O'Brien is kind of depressing, but that's where we are.
Sarr needs to win it. Just bring it back. Bring it back to Detroit.
Yep, bring it home.
I have one question, and then we could wrap this podcast up. And it's actually from Maurice, and I think it's a very good question. He said, since we're looking ahead and surveying the league and the teams that could go into a rebuild, who are the potential players that the Pistons could realistically look to get? So I actually pulled up the standings, just kind of looking at teams that I feel that could possibly sell off. And I want to start with the Western Conference, Sean.
Yep.
I think Phoenix is the easy choice.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen with Kevin Durant. You don't know what's going to happen with Bradley Beal or anything like that.
I think we know what's going to happen with Kevin Durant after what they tried to do with him at the trade deadline. But I certainly see your point.
I think Sacramento too. Like I'd keep an eye on Sabonis because Sabonis only re-signed in with the Kings because of De'Aaron Fox.
Yep.
And now he has to play with two guys that are very ball dominant, that don't like to pass the basketball, and Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Like Domantas Sabonis, I think would be very interesting. I've always been really high on him. Just kind of like looking at the Western Conference. I mean, I think the Pelicans don't know what they do with Zion or CJ. I don't really know like what they're going to do or their plans, but those are just kind of the teams that I'm looking at in the West to possibly blow it up.
I mean, I definitely think New Orleans is going to have to start making some wholesale changes because I don't know anyone there who would still feel confident about building around Zion going forward. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Pelicans. I just don't think Zion is anything that's worth going anywhere near. By the way, he's only played he hasn't even played like 40% of his career games. I wouldn't be surprised if Houston makes some wholesale changes because they're looking to win now, but I think they're going to be looking to get like a more definitive number one option or star. I think they need to really define their hierarchy. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see some players from the Houston Rockets that would be available. Like you said, Sacramento is a team that's going to be making some real changes. And I think they, in the summer, will, start to kind of define a direction for themselves. I think someone like Miles Turner is someone that's going to be, pretty available. Reports are that Indiana wants to get a little bit cheaper at the big position. So, he's someone. How ironic would it be after Isaiah Stewart making fun of him with Legos? I would love if they were teammates, if the Pistons social team could get those guys together building a Lego set, that might be one of the greatest Twitter videos of all time. So just saying, that would be incredible. But I mean, I think there's going to be a wealth of teams. I think Philadelphia is going to have to start being more honest with themselves. I wonder, like what Paul George's future looks like as far as, where he's going to be. I think a lot of different teams in the league, I mean, even Miami is going to have to start, making some decisions because yes, they're building around Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo. They have Wiggins, but are they going to be satisfied with just continuing to be around 500? So that's the other thing. Also Atlanta, that's going to be a big one. They're starting to build around their younger core of like Jalen Johnson and Zachary Reese-Shea. I'm not saying the Pistons are going to be in the Trae Young market because no, but like just like all that to really say, especially with the first and second aprons with this, like with this salary cap, like I know people can get really caught in the weeds of what that actually means, but to really summarize it, it's a hard salary cap. And so teams are going to have to start being a lot more honest of who they are and who they aren't. And so because of that, I think you're going to see, like teams like, the narrative going into trade deadline this year was because of the salary cap, you're going to see a lot less trades. Well, what's really happening is you're seeing a lot more trades because you're seeing front offices have a lot of hard conversations. Like, can we win around Luka Doncic? Like when you're starting to have front offices have questions about those types of obvious answers, that tells you just how much the league is seismically shifting. And so Trajan Langdon, if he plays his cards right, could be a beneficiary of that.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of great points. I know we talked about Western Conference teams. I'm looking at Eastern Conference teams. You mentioned Miami. I doubt Miami is comfortable being a 500 basketball team, but you look at their roster, it's just such a Miami Heat type of team that just
Yep.
screw teams over. Like I can see Kyle Anderson just screwing people over in the playoffs because he's just such a smart basketball player.
Wiggins is a guy who I think will thrive in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And there'll always be a free agent destination too. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that was Kevin Durant's next team.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. I actually have a team that might surprise you. I think Orlando might shake some stuff up because where they're at, they're 25 and 28 as of right now, the 8th seed. I feel like they're just a point guard away from. I know Jalen Suggs is a great talent, really good defensively, but he's been in and out of the lineup. I think they need more offense. And it wouldn't surprise me if they possibly, get rid of some of their defensive guys. Like maybe you have conversations about getting rid of a Jonathan Isaac or something like that.
It's unfortunate because I thought they could have potentially gone as far as the Eastern Conference Finals this year if they were healthy. Like they were looking awesome at the beginning of the season. Paulo was playing incredible basketball. But even now with him and Franz both back in the lineup, just not quite recovering fully from, pre-injury, they're having a rough season. So to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if Orlando started to tweak with their formula and kind of like look at, like who they're going to be in the future. Like I think just about any team that's not in the Western Conference or Eastern Conference Finals picture has legitimate reasons to look at their roster and go, we need to make some changes.
Yeah, I would look at Orlando. I'd also look at Milwaukee. That might be another team that maybe surprises you a little bit, but like where they're at, the talent they have, I'm sorry, Sean, they should be the 2nd seed or the 3rd seed in this Eastern Conference because it's a very weak Eastern Conference. I know the Knicks are, star-studded. They went out, traded all their assets, but like you have Giannis, you have Brook Lopez. You did make some trades at the trading deadline to get better, but like if they don't at least make an Eastern Conference Finals, I think you have to start having conversations about their core because their core is incredibly old.
Over under 50% chance that he's on the roster 2 years from now, Giannis.
No shot. I think he's in Houston.
Because I legitimately, like, if you're talking about who is the next superstar to request a trade, I would not be surprised. Like, obviously, Kevin Durant's going to want out of Phoenix after what happened, like with them at the deadline. But I would not be shocked in the slightest if Giannis this summer, after they potentially have like a 1st round flame out or whatever happens in Milwaukee, it would not shock me whatsoever if he said, I want out, because with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, as high expectations as that roster had, there's just not an excuse for them to be the 5th seed. There's just not in this Eastern Conference. And so, especially with New York on the ascension, with Boston being as good as they're going to be for a long time, Cleveland now being a juggernaut, like I think if you're Giannis, I think you look at, like you said, I think Houston would be a perfect spot for him, even though that Western Conference is going to be crazy. I think he's got to look at what the best supporting cast he can get around him. And I just don't think, to your point, there's just no chance in hell Milwaukee's going to be competing for a championship beyond this season. So to really answer your question, Maurice, just about any team in the league could be making seismic shifts now at any time, because with the way that the salary cap is set up, with how easy it is to get into having to pay a luxury tax, you are going to see teams really start to make some significant decisions at a timeline in which we haven't seen teams make in a long time.
Yeah, I think when you look at this new CBA, it's not super team friendly.
No.
I think that's why you saw so many trades.
Right.
I love this question by Maurice because it really has us thinking. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if, like, I know Brooklyn has made it known that they will give the farm to land a Giannis. They will give all their picks to Brooklyn right now if it could land them a Giannis. But It's really interesting to kind of look at the landscape, especially in both conferences. Like I could see Denver blowing it up as well. Like if they have
Yep.
one of the best players in Nikola Jokic, like who's to say Michael Porter Jr. couldn't be on the move? That's an expensive contract. That's a number 2, number 3 option that they have there. Like, Denver could have some shakeups because they feel that like if they don't win another championship, this front office could possibly break up this core, and who knows how many more years Jokic could play at this level, because just the way he's playing, man, like you could have a conversation that he could win another MVP, because just some of the numbers that he's putting up is absolutely like video game shit. Like you don't see it in everyday life. It's absolutely wild. But I appreciate this question, Maurice. Really good question. I feel like you could have a podcast just on this in itself.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, again, you're just with the way that the league is and how competitive it is. I think you see stars, less complacent than ever. So, to the point of this question, like the biggest thing with the Pistons is just striking at the right opportunity when it presents itself. And with the pace of the league, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that present itself. So you just have to, you have to both play you have to kind of have the balance of being eager and striking when the iron's hot, but at the same time, not, for lack of better terms, not blowing your load too quickly, because, something could present itself that you didn't even fathom. Like, wait, Luka Doncic was on the market.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the Pistons to kind of answer another, like one of your questions, Maurice, like think about it. Who are the long-term contracts on this team? Cade and Stu.
Yep.
The Pistons have a lot of flexibility.
Yep.
They have a lot of guys that are going to be up for rookie contract extensions. I think this front office is keeping their flexibility open just in case a Luka type trade does become available, and then they can strike in, like get that big move or that star or all-star type of caliber player next to Cade, which I think is really strategic by this new front office. Is they weren't really giving out like lucrative deals. Like Tobias was probably the biggest deal, but it was only a 2-year deal.
Yeah, they gave themselves contracts that they could all in theory get out of in a year, which that's the that's the thing that this team hasn't really had, is just that true strategy of how to handle, like your salary cap and having that balance of still being competitive while being fiscally responsible. Like Troy Weaver was good at freeing up cap space. He was also really good at putting together awful basketball rosters. So, the fact that you can have someone that can kind of do both is really crucial for this team going forward.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I feel like you have to give Troy the respect that he tanked for 4 years, laid the foundation with the draft picks. But I mean, even Stan Van Gundy in that legendary 97 won the ticket interview with Mike Maloney saying like, hey man, I could build a shit roster and get a top pick every year. It's not hard. Anyone can do that. What's hard is actually building a team to compete for a championship. And that video, I felt like posting it again yesterday on Twitter. It aged so gracefully. Joel Embiid had that stone cold Steve Austin knee brace. Like, I thought that there was no way he should have been on the basketball court, Sean. He has no mobility. The Kelly Oubre Joel Embiid crash out last night didn't expect that to go viral. I just saw it. I was like, oh, they're fighting. I'm going to post this. And everyone picks it up.
Just about every major Twitter sports account under the sun tweeted your video out of this instance. And I tweeted the caption, like, Kelly Oubre, like he had the I know this ain't coming from you of all people look. Like that was really like what Kelly Oubre was looking at there. And I mean, like quite frankly, a guy like Joel Embiid, like this is exactly why the 76ers are never going to be set up for success. Embiid was never a leader of a franchise. That just was never going to be him. And like this is exactly why their season is going the way that it's gone, is because they take games like the one in Detroit for granted, and they come out and they have an abhorrent performance, especially when each game is becoming more and more important for the 76ers. Like if they want to even have a chance of being in the play-in tournament, we're not talking about about getting one of the top 6 seeds. We're talking about Philly having a better record than the Chicago Bulls. If they want to do that, they have to win games like this, and they can't.
Yeah, man, it's honestly wild just to kind of like watch everything transpire with Philly. Like, I had no idea Kyle Lowry was 40 years old almost. Like, that's a team full of senior citizens. They like Reggie Jackson on that team. Andre Drummond had a lot of former Pistons on that team, and it's just like, what could possibly go wrong? Like, you sent me that wild stat that Paul George's social team has posted more
he has more
clips.
podcast clips on his YouTube channel than field goals made this season.
Dude, like Tobias Harris is like outperforming him, and Philly fans, they have loathe for Tobias Harris, but it's gotten to a point where they want Tobias Harris over Paul George.
If you're to compare Paul George's stats this season with Tobias Harris's career stats, they are almost photo identical. And, like the other thing as well is Tobias, the culture impact that he has. Whereas like Paul George, I don't really get the sense that he's well loved in that Philadelphia locker room. And, the Clippers were given a really hard time for not extending Paul George on that 4-year max this last summer. They look like geniuses now, especially with how good the Clippers have looked this season in comparison to Philly. But yeah, no, I mean, it is, by the way, you want to talk about a potential fascinating storyline. Have you heard potential front office executives that could be linked to the 76ers in case in the event that job becomes available?
I want to say it was former Golden State guy.
Yeah, Bob Myers. So
I don't like that.
I mean, I wouldn't like it. I mean, it would suck, but like, I mean, all the connections are there. Bob Myers worked with Josh Harris and their ownership group to help and put together the culture that they have with the Commanders, and all reports suggest they really enjoyed working together. So if that job does indeed become available, it would not entirely be shocking if Bob Myers found himself in a position to run the Philadelphia 76ers, and that would actually be a process I would have some trust in.
Yeah. I think it would. I think the Daryl Morey thing is just like over. I think people are they were overrating him for years. Like just all the trades that he made in Houston and thinking like he's like this superstar GM, when in actuality, like he's lost so much talent in Philly, and like the time to make a coaching change to move on from Brett Brown. Brett Brown should have been fired years ago, and they just waited too long and like, oh, let's hire Doc Rivers. What could possibly go wrong? And then they go from Doc Rivers to Nick Nurse, and like you could tell they don't respect Nick Nurse like whatsoever. Ryan Boastman has like probably the comment of the night: we're getting coaches fired and players fighting. Crash outs when they play the Pistons.
Teams are legitimately reevaluating their entire franchise after losing to the Pistons. Like it is crazy. Players are getting traded, players are fighting, coaches are getting fired. Like the league changes after the Pistons win.
Yeah. I want to wrap this up, man, but we've almost been on for 2 hours. I feel like every time we have a podcast, it could easily go 2 hours just because we just have so much fun, like not even talking Pistons, but just like basketball. But I want to give you the floor to, plug and promote like what you're working on, where people can follow you, and, just follow your work because you do a really good job.
Thank you, man. Always enjoy coming on. Yeah, you can, if you want to see more of my face, which, if that's the case, that is a brave soul of yours. I respect it, but you can follow myself on Twitter at Sean Half Court, where I do a lot of, anytime I'm at games, a lot of my coverage is on there. You can also find my podcast on YouTube from Half Court, where you can find any coverage going on there. I see your face. Oh, wow.
The Lakers just rescinded their trade for Dalton Connect and Mark Williams. Failed physical, I'm thinking, Mark.
Yep. Nope. That is without a doubt a failed physical. So, I mean, there's a couple things that I think of here. Obviously, number one, Dalton Connect now coming back to the Lakers is going to be really awkward, but I bet there's going to be a blessing in disguise there for Connect. I wouldn't be surprised if they still try to find him a new home in the offseason, just because of the fact that it's always difficult when you trade a young player. To me, the biggest implications that this has for the Lakers is really on the Luka Doncic front of how much harder of a time are you going to have talking him into an extension this offseason now that you don't have that lob that lob threat secured for Luka. I mean, it's probably a blessing in disguise that they were able to get this rescinded and that they were able to get this flipped, because they probably knew about some of his health issues, but it was probably until the Lakers actually got him under the hood, saw, all the health things, that they probably really saw some red flags there. Which, I mean, listen, we talked about it earlier of like, this is a guy who hasn't even gotten to like to 90 career games played. So I'm not entirely surprised that they that they reneged it because of the physical. I think that was kind of the thing we were keeping the eyes on, but man, this was a seismic trade and a massive piece of what the Lakers are building with Luka. So this hurts their case of signing Luka this offseason. So that is going to be fascinating.
Pistons fans can probably remember when they traded for Bol getting excited and the trade got rescinded.
Yep.
They could probably also remember, I'm going to throw a name at you. Do you remember Domantas Montiunas?
Yes.
Yes. That happened with the Pistons as well, where he failed his physical. So that's probably what happened with Mark Williams. As you laid out, the guy has had really bad back issues from like what I've heard and people I've talked to that cover the Hornets. Hate to see it.
I mean, man. I mean, now that we know that the physical was failed, the Hornets were probably giddy that they got that offer across their table for Mark Williams. They probably were keeping their fingers crossed that this would still go through. But, I think if you're Dalton Connect, I mean, the good thing is the Lakers still can have someone who can contribute for them. And listen, another jump shooter to have alongside Luka is never a bad thing. It's just, if you're talking about their prospects for this season, their best big is Jackson Hayes. Their best lob threat is Jackson Hayes. That doesn't bode well for their title chances. So unless this amazing big somehow becomes available on the buyout market, which is not going to happen. But yeah, no, that is I know we were just going to wrap up, but that is a fascinating development in the Luka Doncic Los Angeles Lakers saga.
Yeah, someone said, I remember Robert Horry being a Piston for a week.
Yep.
Man, I got flashbacks to the Bol trade because I remember the Pistons, their social team, they had a picture of Bol and it said like "What up, Doe" on it, and then like it got rescinded because he failed his physical. But man, that's a big blow for the Lakers. It's going to be really awkward to see if he plays tomorrow against the Pistons.
Well, now you can't help but wonder, for Mark Williams in his future prospects. I mean, what do you do if you're the Hornets? Because, this is a guy who failed another physical, like as far as his health goes, you're probably not feeling super great about him again alongside LaMelo for the long term. So, I mean, this is probably the only time they're going to get an offer relatively close to that for Mark Williams. So This is just as big of a blow as this is for the Lakers. This could potentially be an even bigger blow for the Hornets. Because they return there. Now, they a good thing for the Hornets, they still got Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah. I know I was giving you the floor to plug yourself, but I don't think people probably even remember what we were talking about.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my Twitter at Sean Half Court. If you want to see more breakdowns of NBA stories like this from Half Court, my podcast, we talk Pistons, but we also talk a lot of NBA. So my next pod, I'm probably going to be diving into this situation a little bit more as we learn more news. So if you want to hear more insight on that situation, be sure you go to From Half Court. But yeah, man, always appreciate having me on. I'm always glad to come on and talk Pistons and basketball, and always enjoy joking around with you, man. So always enjoy coming on the pod.
Yeah, like I enjoyed going on your pod, and I'll tell you a funny story about that when we hang up, because I haven't told you yet, and you'll probably laugh your ass off.
Oh, and one more thing that we didn't talk about, shout out to Tom Gores and Jared Goff and all those people for putting together the WNBA bid to bring WNBA basketball back to Detroit too. The Detroit basketball isn't complete unless the Shocker in the equation as well. So just wanted to quick mention that too.
Yeah, now you'll have a reason to chant Jared Goff at a Shock game.
Yeah, there's actually a reason to chant Jared Goff's name in the LCA now.
Yeah, I hope they do get that bid. Sounds like Adam Silver wants a Detroit WNBA team back for them, which, hey, man, I'm all for it. Like, you're going to give me basketball to watch this summer. I'm all for it. Let's go. I mean,
heck yeah.
Hopefully we can get a franchise player. I know I'm trying to think of her name. I think her name's Juju. I can't remember her last name, but I watched a couple highlights of her at USC. Man, like, she's tough. Like, if the Pistons could, or the Shot could draft her with the first overall pick, that'd be awesome.
So one quick thing, because now Dave McMenamin said the Lakers say the trade was rescinded because of the Hornets' failure to satisfy a condition of the trade. So that might not even be physical related. It could be, but like that's here's what we'll say. The next 48 hours are going to be fascinating. I'm going to be glued to Dave McMenamin and Sham's Twitter profiles to see all the reporting on this, because a lot will be coming out.
I can't wait for Bill Simmons' next podcast. It's going to be a cinema.
Oh, yeah. He's going to be clowning on the Hornets like no tomorrow.
Oh, he's going to be clowning on the Lakers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. He's going to be happy to do both.
Oh, man. But I appreciate you coming on, man. I can't say I've ever had a podcast and breaking news like that has actually happened. It's the first time it's happened in probably about 4 years. So my bad for taking up 10 more minutes of your time.
Hey, that was worthwhile news. That was a worthwhile reason to prologue the podcast.
But we'll see you guys tomorrow. We're going to be doing a Detroit Pistons versus Charlotte Hornets post-game podcast like we do after every Detroit Pistons game. But until next time, you guys, take care. Have a good weekend, and fuck the Chiefs.